Hello, I'm your host Orn Abdi, and welcome to this week's episode of 5 Reason Friday, where I break down the 5 reasons why you should, or in some cases should not, read certain books. In this week's episode, I'll be showing you the 5 reasons why you should be reading Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ by Daniel Goleman. If you'd like to listen to the 1-minute book review I did of this book, I'll put a link in the description below. I rated it 5 stars, so that's why I've added it to the 5 Reason Friday, because I thought it's a 5-star read. I think you guys should really read it. Alright, let's get started on this week's episode. So reason 1, scientific. Goleman gives specific scientific explanations to how and why emotions affect our mind and body and how that changes our behavioral characteristics. He gives detailed scientific explanations and examples of individuals, for instance, where their amygdala, which is the center of their emotions and emotional behavior, have been affected, which have negatively affected their lives afterwards. In many cases, that meant that the individuals have foregone their ability to perceive danger, or in many cases that they are unable to read emotional cues when it comes to their loved ones or individuals that they meet. In other circumstances, certain individuals who have a damaged hippocampus, which is the area which deals with memory, details certain aspects of their lives that living without a hippocampus would affect them in certain ways. And Goleman highlights many instances where the hippocampus in a participant or an individual has gone, and he gives an example of how that's affected his life. And it doesn't do it in the sense that, look at that person, he hasn't got hippocampus, but it's showing you the stages that we go through as people who mostly have undamaged hippocampus, and how our brains and bodies and emotions react to part of our brain not working. The book sheds light on multiple scientific studies. It's why I love this book, because I have a curiosity in this genre of emotional intelligence, because I do believe that it's more important than IQ. But this book, I was really surprised how Goleman was able to get my curiosity with this book, but then wanted me or gave me the incentive to know and research to know and learn more about the subject, because I feel passionately about it. My favorite quote of the book, which was by Ledoux, who was a neuroscientist featured in the book, says that the hippocampus deals with the memory of seeing the face of your cousin, but it's the amygdala that reminds you that you don't like her. The science in the book is by no means complicated, and the author does a great job in explaining any complicated scientific topics that he talks about. So if you don't have any idea, or you're somewhat apprehensive because you fear that the science might be too complicated, really don't worry. The science in this is quite basic, and if there is anything technical, then Goleman does explain it in the book. Reason 2, educational. Now, before I read this book, I didn't feel like people could have control over their emotions when it came to biologically interpreting their emotions before they happened. But in the book, Goleman gives basic understanding of the triggers that happen when you feel certain emotions. So when you feel anger, love, or any other emotion that you have, then you become more reactive to that emotion when it hits you. What it teaches you in the book is that you can somewhat preempt your emotion when that happens. So what that means is that when an emotion hits you, then you can sort of preempt that and base your decisions on that before it even happens. And what that means is that in your day-to-day lives, if something bothers you or an emotion triggers a reaction from you, you're able to deal that better because you know where it's coming from, because you've been in that place before and you've associated that experience to that emotion. Whereas before I didn't think this was true, I really believe this after reading the book. And that's why I think it's educational, because it gives you triggers for you to take into your day-to-day lives. And it's educational because it gives you the biological background for how your brain works and how you deal with emotions and the triggers from that. Now, I don't think that you shouldn't be angry in some cases. I think some cases mean that you should be angry. But what the book does is it enables you to think about the triggers behind your emotions and how your body deals with them before and after you make a certain emotional decision. And I think this book is really good because it gives you that educational background. Reason 3, thought-provoking. Now, throughout education, we're told that regurgitating facts and learning facts and information very two-dimensionally is what gets you good grades if you're able to memorize that in the short term. However, if you look at EQ as higher than IQ, then you tend to put precedence on relationships and communicating with people and being more empathetic to them as higher than your ability to regurgitate facts. And this book really confirms that. I'm a strong believer in that facts and information is good, but if you're not able to question and debate those facts and be curious to new learning and new ways of developing your knowledge, then those facts are redundant. Also, developing relationships both professionally and personally when it comes to your day-to-day life is somewhat overshadowed when looking at someone's intelligence. If you're able to communicate with people in different scenarios and adapt your communication styles for different people, if you're leading a team, for instance, at work, or in your leisure activities, if you're part of a sports team, dealing with emotions and dealing with people who have different characteristics is not seen as something or as someone who is intelligent. However, the book highlights that being emotionally intelligent and being intelligent of the people around you in the environment and the different emotions that people feel is intelligent, and somewhat can be more intelligent as an indicator to someone's leadership ability than someone who is, let's say, book smart or someone who just regurgitates facts. What the book also emphasized was having a productive and balanced childhood really contributed to having less problems in your adulthood. Whether that those problems are really can have any magnitude, but there was a consistency for people who had an unbalanced childhood that they had problems further down the road emotionally when it came to dealing with the people emotionally or triggering emotions or being able to sense someone else's emotions. And although this hypothesis, I had this hypothesis when it came to dealing with those or knowing of those, this book really affirmed that and affirmed my understanding that early childhood onset when it comes to environment really helps people understand emotions. So number 4, practical. Now, what do I mean by practical? So practical in the sense that the information that's given in this book is something that you can take into your daily lives. Goleman doesn't give you a step-by-step basis about your brain does this, therefore you need to act in this way in order to deal with this person, this situation, this person, this situation. It's not a self-help book. It's a scientific research behind how your brain reacts to emotions. It's more to do with the triggers behind certain emotions. So if you want to act in a certain way, then your body has certain triggers to those emotions. This book falls into the small minority of educational books that give you something practical to take with you. Now, something when it comes to emotional cognizance and being aware of your emotions is not really talked about enough. And I feel like I want to use this platform and use books, and books should be used such as these, to say that, and is to say that, look, our ability to be open-minded and our ability to know and be empathetic to people's emotions should be at the forefront of our minds. And we can only know that if we know the biology behind that. You can be empathetic to someone, but sometimes you need to understand the biology behind it if you're going to know how you are going to react to that person as well. And this book gives a really, really good basic knowledge about how you react to certain emotions and how you're able to detect someone's emotions in front of you in any situation. And it's something you can take into your daily lives as well. So reason 5, original. The reason why I think this book is original is because, like I've pointed out in earlier points, is that the book is not dry. Many scientific books can be dry when it comes to regurgitating really scientific information, but that's not what the mass population need or want when it comes to reading a book such as this. They want basic scientific research, but they want to know how to apply it into their daily lives. And I feel like this book is really original because it branches out into so many different fields, explaining the basics of emotions, how it affects our bodies, then looking at trauma-related, so PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder in certain cases when it comes to after-war effects or people that have seen stuff that's traumatic. Even if you're not interested in why emotional intelligence could be better than IQ, I still think that having a knowledge of EQ itself will be beneficial to your life. I am a firm believer in EQ or emotional intelligence being a better proponent for intelligence, all-round intelligence than IQ itself. IQ is still a good barometer to someone's intelligence, but I think in day-to-day practical life, when it comes to professionally and personally, I think that emotional intelligence is far outweighs IQ. And hopefully if you read this book, I think you'll understand that. The book isn't too long, So it shouldn't take you too long, and I mean it's 300 pages. So, and it's not too dry, and there's a lot of good information for you there to take away with you and to get a good understanding of what emotions are and what emotional intelligence is. So that's it for this week's episode of 5 Reason Friday. Let me know in the comments what you think, whether you've read this book or whether you're thinking about reading this book, or just your opinion on whether you think EQ is a better proponent or barometer for IQ when it comes to intelligence. I've been your host, Orn Abdi. Thanks for listening.